I am the spy.
Get away!
What makes a weapon interesting in Team Fortress 2? There's a lot of ways to answer this question. It depends on the class, the viability of the item, how unique the item is in comparison to the other items, and finally, its viability with the other weapons in the class's arsenal. Is the weapon good on its own? Does the weapon need more help from another weapon in order to be at peak usefulness? Does it change up how a class gets looked at, or is it similar to the stock's main role? There's a lot that goes into designing weapons, and some of that lies in with how it pairs with others. Some weapons are good on their own full stop. These are usually found with the primary weapons, and in some cases, the secondary weapons. Weapons that need to be helped out with other weapons usually are more support items, or weapons that deal damage but only in certain scenarios. For instance, none of the shields are bad weapons unless you only use the shield without any other weapon. The Market Gardener is a great weapon, but only when it's paired with a rocket jumping soldier who knows how to get around easily. So that's why the Rocket Jumper is such a good weapon to use with the Market Gardener, since it gives the user as many chances to jump around the map and use the Gardener. This isn't unique to TF2, pretty much every shooter has this. Out of ammo? It's always faster to swap to your secondary. It's intrinsic to minigames design on how they get used. It's just TF2 takes this idea to another level. You can trade out immediate damage in exchange for items that help you out in the long run. It allows for more risky and interesting plays to happen in the game. Some weapons in this game are able to get the job done by themselves, while others need help from another weapon to get their full effect off. You're given the tools to make such interesting plays happen with the hundreds of combinations that you can make. Each of the classes are designed differently, but still play with these ideas. Scout has a pistol for more mid-range damage and can reload its magazine all at once, in comparison to a scattergun, which is more for close-range battling and has to reload each shell. The Demo Man has explosive primaries and secondaries, so his melee slot is built for when an enemy gets too close to him. In fact, let's talk about the melee slot in this game. The melee slot in TF2 is quite an interesting part of this game. There are several different uses for the melee weapons. While yes, some are just a speed boost, there are others that have more interesting mechanics in them. Some classes may benefit from their melee weapons more than others, but all of them have some sort of interesting mechanic going on with the unlocks that you get. You have melee weapons that grant you more support while they're out, maybe it's more speed or more defense, and some melee weapons are used for the offensive capabilities, such as more damage or health back on kill. There are several items that put their feet into both lanes, but not a lot stray too far away with it. And furthermore... Okay, we could probably stop stalling and talk about the main part of the video. It's coming up on 8 years on when the last items got added to Team Fortress 2 from the Jungle Inferno update. An update that had 5 items added to it, and half of the good items went to heavy. The Dragon's Fury came in and changed up how Pyro was looked at. Instead of just being able to just WM1, you can now shoot fireballs at the enemy. The gas passer is garbage, the thermal thruster is an interesting way to use some of the flamethrowers and a neat getaway tool, but to be honest, I prefer the detonator. And then you finally have the hot hand. The hot hand is a weapon that perplexes me. Everyone has made their strong opinions heard about pretty much every single other weapon that got added into the update, but not the hot hand. It escapes a lot of people. What does the hot hand do? Well, for starters, it separates your attacks into 2 swings, and each slap gives you a speed boost. But how long is the speed boost? Well, the speed boost... it ended. It already ended before it could finish the sentence. Well, that's fine, you have 2 slaps and hitting both, it also ended. Okay, the speed boost lasts, in total, 1 second. 1 whole second for you to do anything with. In comparison, the speed boost you get from the Extinguisher is 4 seconds long, and also deals mini-crits in addition to increasing its base damage depending on how long the enemy has afterburn on them for. Power Jack gives a permanent speed boost as long as the weapon is out, but you take more damage from all sources. So now we have several melee weapons that give Pyro a speed boost in his melee slot. But now, let's answer a question. Why does Pyro have several speed adjusting items specifically in his melee slot? For a class that's primarily based on doing damage, his speed and mobility aren't the best. Scout has the highest speed and a double jump, Soldier has rocket jumping, Demo has sticky jumping, and if you're feeling frisky, a shield charge. Pyro doesn't have much of these things. While yes, he can jump with some of the flare guns and he can use the jetpack, Pyro doesn't really have a way to get to the front lines easily with his base kit. So the Power Jack here is to help Pyro pick up the pace. The Power Jack is probably in running for his best melee for how easily the weapon can just fall into any playstyle without any real restrictions, other than take more damage when it's out. I could 100% see any playstyle really working with the Power Jack, since its design is based within itself being a good item. The Extinguisher, on the other hand, fills a different niche when it comes to giving the speed bonus. The Power Jack is a weapon that helps Pyro with getting to the front lines, but when it comes to attacking people, it doesn't really do much other than give health back on kill. The Extinguisher is more of an offensive tool. While doing less damage than stock axe, it gives mini crits to burning targets in addition to damage based on how much time they have left with their afterburn. After just some burning on the enemies, most of the classes are ready to be killed with a single hit from the Extinguisher. And if you kill the targets, you are given a speed boost to either escape, or you can start targeting another enemy. You can pair some of the other items to get closer to the enemies in order to use the Extinguisher more effectively. The hot hand on the other room temperature hand is odd. The 1 second speed boost doesn't help with anything that the Pyro has. By the time you realize you have the speed boost, it's gone. You don't get to do anything interesting with it, and since the weapon has a 2-swing mechanic, you're probably going to be out of position when the second swing starts to activate. You can't do much of anything with the speed boost. So I got to wondering, is the hot hand good as an active melee weapon? Should I wait around a corner with it out and try to kill the enemy with it like it's the back scratcher? Well, it's not awful at the job. Hitting an enemy twice for a speed boost is pretty good. It allows you to juke around the enemy while fighting them. Only problem with that is that there's a 20% damage penalty for the weapon. So you're only doing 28 damage per swing. Hitting both will give you 56 damage. And since you'll be changing up your speed in 1 second intervals with the weapon, you can easily lose track of your opponent. Now it's already bad looking for the weapon to just use it as a normal weapon, but the damage penalty means that you are not going to be breaking the light health damage threshold. If you hit both swings, twice, you only do 112 damage. You do not kill any 125 health classes. You need to hit an enemy 2.5 times in order to deal over 125 damage. A half. That's ridiculous. Let's talk about the speed boost you get. The weapon gives you a speed boost on hit, and it speeds you up by 35%. It's quite the speed boost. However, you aren't really helped out since it takes so many hits to kill a light health class. The Extinguisher grants you more damage on burning players and a speed boost on kill that lasts 4 seconds. So what I believe the reason it's much better is because it's made for actively killing the enemy. Let me explain. Let's look at 2 other melee dependent classes, Demo Knight and Spy. Okay, one's a subclass, but my point still stands. These 2 classes are also dependent on weapons that involve getting into melee range, but the weapons they use are much easier. If the weapons didn't do that much damage to begin with, the enemy would easily get away using much better alternatives. Demo Knight does have a speed boost when he uses any of his shields, but when he attacks an enemy, he gets a crit with 2 of them and a mini crit with another shield, both doing a lot of damage to the enemy and is able to make quick work of them. The Spy actively has an insta-kill mechanic, where he gets a backstab on the enemy. The hot hand does not have any good damage going for it, and since you'll be moving around a lot with each landed swing, there'll be times when the enemy just goes missing from your sight. Hell, even using the Power Jack is easier, since you'll be able to kill enemies with just 2 hits. You can't really get close to your opponents while using the weapon, since the bonus is only applied on hit, and when you kill an enemy, you're not really rewarded. The bonus you get is a 1 second speed boost. Even if you kill someone with the weapon, you're not going to be going really anywhere with it, since by the time you decide where to go with it, the speed boost is over. The speed boost you get from the Extinguisher is much more useful. It only comes when the enemy is killed with it, but you're able to do much more with 4 seconds of its own speed boost. The hot hand speed boost doesn't even work as a getaway tool, since any opponent is going to catch up to you. And let's just say I was able to smack my opponent to death with the weapon. Would using the Power Jack for this purpose be any different? For example, using the Power Jack will grant you a 15% speed bonus, bringing Pyro speed from 100% to 115%. Medic and Spy, the second fastest classes in the game, runs at speeds of 107%. While yes, the speed bonus you get from the hot hand is more than the Power Jack, you only have it for 1 second. The Power Jack lets you run faster than the second fastest classes in the game. The hot hand cannot break this speed threshold because its effect isn't permanent or even long enough to matter in the first place. Using the Power Jack as an offensive tool is actively easier since you can reach your targets easier. Now the weapon isn't so good when it's on its own, but how about when it's paired with other weapons in the class's arsenal? Well, technically speaking, the weapons switch and are active after half a second, so any weapon actively pairs with the item, with the one switching faster being better. But like I said earlier, is using the power jack any different? I feel like every weapon pairs with it, less due to the fact it's usable with every weapon like the power jack, but more so its effect is so meaningless that it equally underperforms every single other option. I'd rather use stock axe than the hot hand, and there's a legit upgrade from the stock axe. Plus, what would the strategy even be? I can see clear strategies with the other offensive weapons. What's the end goal of the hot hand when it's a combo weapon? Well, the best that I could really come up with is smack the enemy with the hot hand, juke around them with your speed boost, and then use your shotgun or flamethrower to finish them off. If you only hit them once, you only do 28 damage, and since I'm already getting into melee range of the enemy, why wouldn't I start off the interaction with the shotgun or flamethrower? Pyro as a class is all about getting in closer to your targets and making the game as hard as possible for the enemy. The hot hand as a weapon should reflect that, but it doesn't. There is no main way to use it as an offensive tool effectively, and its defensive aspect is sorely lacking. So what can be done? Well, the item is going to have to be worked on so it's actually usable, so the entire weapon is going to be redesigned. If you make the speed boost longer, then you just have a better extinguisher, so I do want to change up how it gets worked with. For starters, one strategy we can use is making it much more like the disciplinary action, having it so slapping teammates can speed both you and the teammate up. It would make it much more useful in more games, but it's similar to the soldier melee, which might not be interesting, so I got another solution. Another solution we could try is making it so it does more damage and does a bit of knockback like the force of nature. You can give it a slower firing speed in order to make it more balanced. You'll give the weapon its own purpose for being used, which is separate from the others with its unique mechanic. Some people may not like it, which I understand. TF2 doesn't have a lot of knockback mechanics, and some people would want it to stay that way, which makes sense. I have also played Overwatch 2. I would not want anyone else to do that, ever. The last fix I have for the weapon is letting the weapon have a charge mechanic. If you get 3 slaps, you get to shoot a fireball which can do over 100 damage. You could also have either a damage penalty or a swing speed penalty. This will make it again unique from the rest of the cast of melee weapons, and it'll be useful for dealing with multiple enemies. I feel like this could be a good fix for the weapon since it works well with TF2's design of massive damage for single shot items. Now I hope one of these ideas resonates since the weapon can be interesting, but I feel like we got the worst version of the weapon itself. You can't use it as a normal weapon, and using it for utility doesn't work too much either. It's got a bit of utility and offensive abilities, but they both sort of cancel each other out, which isn't the best. But either way, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.